The world didn't slow down when Emily Hart came seconds from death. It just sharpened. The roaring highway blurred into streaks of silver and red. The cold air sliced her skin, and the out-of-control truck skidded toward her like something pulled straight out of a nightmare. She couldn't even scream. Her knees locked, her lungs froze, and she knew without a doubt that she was about to die. And then, in the last impossible heartbeat, a stranger's arms wrapped around her and yanked her out of the truck's path with a force so sudden it rattled her bones. They hit the ground, rolled across gravel, and came to a gasping stop behind a concrete barrier. Emily felt the thunder of her own pulse in her ears, but all she truly knew was this: someone had saved her life, and before she could even breathe a thank you, he was already pulling away. By the time she blinked the dust from her eyes, the man was gone. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and good people who appear when we need them most, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Emily sat there trembling, her hands clutching the rough ground, her breath shaking like it had forgotten how to exist. She didn't know his name. She didn't know where he came from. She only knew the strange steadiness of his arms during the rescue, the faint scent of pine on his clothes, and the quiet determination in his expression before he vanished, like he was never meant to stay. For days afterward, she replayed that moment over and over in her mind, the stranger who saved her life and disappeared like a ghost. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she was just grateful to be alive. But deep down, something had shifted. She wanted to know him. She needed to. In the small town of Brookside, stories traveled faster than cars, and soon her near-death experience became the talk of every coffee shop, barbershop, and grocery line. People speculated, exaggerated, and theorized about the mysterious hero, but Emily barely listened. She wasn't interested in rumors. She wanted truth. She went back to the spot where he saved her, hoping somehow he might return. She asked gas station clerks, nearby shop owners, joggers who frequented the area. Nobody had seen him. Nobody knew him. It was as if he had appeared just for her, then dissolved into thin air. The weeks that followed should have been filled with relief, gratitude, and a renewed appreciation for life. But instead, they were wrapped in an ache she couldn't name. She found herself staring at crowds, scanning faces, wondering if one of them belonged to him. She dreamed of him, not his face because she hadn't truly seen it clearly, but of his presence, solid and steady, a quiet storm that felt strangely familiar even though she didn't know him at all. Emily began to wonder if she was chasing a ghost or a miracle. Her friends joked that she had hero fever, that near-death experiences made people romanticize anything. Emily laughed with them, but inside she felt defensive. It wasn't infatuation, it was gratitude tangled with curiosity and something deeper she didn't have the courage to say aloud. He didn't just save her life, he left an imprint on it. Then one late autumn afternoon, while she was picking up pastries from a local bakery for her mother's birthday, she froze. Across the street, leaning against a motorcycle with a quiet stillness that contrasted sharply with the bustle around him, stood a man whose posture, relaxed but intensely aware, hit her like a shockwave. She couldn't see his face beneath the shadow of his cap, but everything inside her whispered the same impossible truth. It was him. She stepped into the crosswalk, her pulse racing, but by the time she reached the other side, he was gone again. The motorcycle engine faded into the distance, leaving her standing there with a box of pastries that suddenly felt far heavier than it should. That night she couldn't sleep. The universe wasn't cruel enough to show her a glimpse only to rip him away again. Or was it? All she knew was that something inside her had awakened with fierce determination. If fate was playing games, she was done being the passive one. She wanted answers. Emily began visiting places she thought he might appear. Coffee shops early in the morning, parks at sunset, streets near construction, sites where she sometimes noticed the motorcycle sounds echoing between buildings. She felt ridiculous sometimes, wandering aimlessly, but she couldn't stop. Something about him tugged at her like a thread connecting two lives that weren't supposed to meet, but did anyway in the most unexpected way. One evening, after work, she saw him again. This time, he wasn't fleeting. He was sitting alone on a bench by the river, the fading light bathing his figure in warm gold. She froze, afraid that if she blinked, he would vanish like before. But he didn't. He remained still, staring at the water as if it held all his answers and all his regrets. Emily felt her knees weaken with a mixture of fear and relief. She forced herself to walk toward him, every step heavy with anticipation but driven by the memory of how close she came to dying and how alive she felt now. When she finally stood beside him, he looked up, and for the first time, she saw his face clearly. He was younger than she expected, yet his eyes carried a weight far older than his years. There was a softness to his features that contrasted with the quiet intensity in his gaze. And in that moment, Emily felt a strange calm settle over her, like she had found something she had unknowingly been searching for her entire life. He didn't greet her warmly. In fact, he seemed troubled by her presence. But as Emily sat beside him, she realized his distance wasn't rudeness, it was fear. The fear of being known, the fear of mattering, the fear of being seen by someone who had every reason to ask questions he didn't want to answer. In long, hesitant paragraphs exchanged without dialogue, she learned fragments about him. His name was Ryan. He didn't have a stable home. He moved from job to job, place to place, always drifting like someone trying not to leave footsteps behind. He saved her, but he never meant to be found. He never meant to matter. He never meant to build connections, but there she was, sitting beside him, refusing to let him disappear again. Emily noticed the way he flinched at kindness as though he wasn't used to it. She noticed the way he watched people from a distance, longing for connection but terrified of it at the same time. And she noticed the way his eyes softened, just barely, whenever she spoke, like he wanted to look away but couldn't. Their meetings became more frequent, each one accidental at first, then slowly intentional. Ryan would appear at the river near sunset, and Emily would find excuses to walk that route after work. They never labeled anything, never made promises, but something gentle and magnetic formed between them. A connection built on vulnerability, shared silence, and unspoken longing. Yet the closer Emily felt to Ryan, the more she sensed him pulling away. He carried a heaviness that made him retreat whenever something felt too real. It wasn't another woman, it wasn't fear of commitment. It was something deeper, a wound carved long before she entered his life. And then, just when Emily felt he might finally open his heart, he vanished again. Days passed, then a week, then two. The river bench remained empty. His motorcycle no longer rumbled down the streets at odd hours. He left no note, no explanation, no farewell. Once again, he had disappeared from her world like a ghost. Emily felt the ache return, stronger, deeper, almost unbearable. She searched for him, retraced everywhere they had been, even asked around town despite his obvious desire for anonymity. Nothing. He was gone. But this time, something had changed. Emily wasn't just searching for a stranger who saved her life. She was searching for a man who had unknowingly changed it. On a cold December evening, she found him again, but not where she expected. He was working construction on the edge of town, lifting lumber with quiet focus. His posture was tense, guarded, as if he expected trouble at any moment. Emily approached him slowly, her heart pounding with both anger and relief. He looked startled, almost pained when he saw her. She didn't yell, she didn't demand explanations. She simply stood there, letting him see the hurt, the longing, and the unspoken truth in her eyes. And that was what finally broke his silence. Ryan revealed that he disappeared because he felt unworthy of being in anyone's life, especially hers. He believed he brought trouble wherever he went, that his past was too stained with mistakes, and that being near him would only bring her pain. But Emily didn't see a broken man. She saw the man who saved her without hesitation. She saw the man who faced danger so she could live. She saw the man who sat beside her by the river, letting his guard down piece by piece. She saw someone worth fighting for. And in that fragile moment of truth, something finally shifted. Ryan didn't promise her forever. He didn't suddenly transform into a fearless, confident man. But he stayed, for one day, then another, and another. Commitment came slowly, like sunrise, soft, gradual, but impossible to stop. They rebuilt their connection, this time without running. They walked the town streets together, shared late-night talks in quiet corners, and learned each other the way people do when they know how easily life can vanish. Ryan became steadier, still wounded but healing. Emily grew braver, still afraid of losing him but determined not to. Months passed, and their once fragile bond bloomed into something real, something strong, something that felt like a second chance neither of them knew they deserved. If this story touches your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps support the channel. Before the ending, please comment below. Do you believe some people enter our lives for a reason? In the end, Ryan didn't vanish again. Instead, he slowly allowed himself to build a life with Emily, gentle, imperfect, beautifully human. Because sometimes the person who saves you is also the person who needs saving the most, and sometimes the greatest miracles aren't the ones that arrive with noise and brilliance, but the ones who appear quietly, like a whisper of fate, and stay long enough to change everything.